So my name is Gerry, live here in the city of Montreal, and together with
Marcia, we pastor a church here in Montreal.
And we're the founders of the organization called La Sortie,
The Way
in
Out.
English, The Way Out. La Sortie is a resource that helps young women who are victims of sex trafficking to get out of the situation that they're in and rebuild their lives. They can come and stay in the residence for a number of months, even over a year if they would like, to be able to just rebuild.
Their dignity.
Regain their dignity is the best word, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On the front page of the Montreal Gazette, there was a story about a report by the World Health Organization that showed that there were about 10,000 teenagers who were homeless in Montreal, most of them runaways, and that they, for the most part, turned to drugs, selling of drugs, and of course prostitution to be able to survive. So when I read that, my heart was broken, and we talked about it and said, what can we do? This is a horrible situation, because we were not aware that that problem existed to this point in a city like Montreal. At that time, we weren't able to really do anything, and when it was many years later that we started gathering together a group of people, and we were able to form a first committee and then a first group that began to invest their time and their money that we could get this organization off the ground. The focus of the whole resource is to help these young women get out of a situation where they're being exploited, and knowing that these young people, so many teenagers even, but into their 20s and 30s, that the exploitation happens because of their need for a drug fix, and knowing that they're not going to be able to get any money except by falling into the hands of a pimp somewhere. We knew that they needed a resource where they could get away from their situation physically, live in a secure location where their pimp knows not where they are, and that they are surrounded by people who'll take care of them and allow them to just rebuild their life for as long as they need.
One of the things we found was that there are different centers maybe, but nobody takes them long term. So that was our heart, is they need a place not just for a night, not for 2 nights, but they need a place. Sometimes they don't even have identity. They have to go back, and you have to get, the pimp has taken all their identification, all their papers, and you have to start from scratch to rebuild these people. So our heart was, it has to be long term. Some of them, we've had testimonies of people 2 months. Some of them it's taken a year, and we don't mind. We've seen them get their dignity back and go back to school and get a career. And that's so precious, because that's what they need. They need something to go back to after. So that was one of the big things in finding, yes, there are places, but not long term.
Yeah, there was just a conversation between the owner of the dry cleaning store and another woman, and that was talking about someone who had lived a difficult time because of sex trafficking, and I just spoke up and said, well, we're having a gala tonight actually about this, or tomorrow night. And the person told me that their own daughter had been kidnapped
At a high school right here.
Right here in the West Island of Montreal, a 14-year-old girl. And so after 2 weeks of the police not being able to find her, thankfully, the parents had their own financial resources. They could hire some private detectives, and they ended up finding her in Toronto and rescued her a few weeks later. So yeah, those situations happen where young women are actually physically taken by these pimps. But usually it's young women who are having difficulty at home and will run away, and then they become very vulnerable, either people who've lived in Montreal or people coming from outside of Montreal. They get here, they have no resources, they know no one, and as you've probably heard, the pimps will hang out in places where young people can find young people, whether
Movie
the bus
theaters?
station, these
Shopping
places.
centers.
Yeah, and they just look for whoever's vulnerable and approach them and talk to them about, hey, we have a place for you to stay and we can show you a good time. And yeah, in Montreal, the average age is 13 or 14 for young women getting exploited and becoming really a slave of a young man taking advantage of her. And when you think of that, 13 or 14, that's the average age. So
There's younger.
yeah, how distressing is it to realize that they're 10, 11, 12-year-old girls, the same thing. And the young men, even a little bit younger. So 11, 12, they're getting approached by these pimps who, like Marcia says, will just insert themselves into their lives, saying that they're going to, give them all kinds of things, and then whether it's through drugs or through other means, they get them hooked and literally become a sex slave. So sexual exploitation is a modern day version of slavery that goes on. And unfortunately, it's right here in Montreal. Most of the young women and young men who are being trafficked in Montreal are people who grew up in Quebec. They're not people from other countries, although it does happen. There are young women and young men from other countries that are brought here with the express reason for being trafficked. But most of them, 9 out of 10 I believe it is, that there are homegrown young people that we have somehow failed.
Yeah, but some of them get into it very innocently. We had someone come and work for La Sortie for years, and her girlfriend, 14 years of age, saw a sign in the summertime, as a job on a telephone post. Called the number, within 10 minutes, there was somebody to pick them up.
There's an offer if you're looking to, a photographer looking for models. So if you'd like to make some money.
Yeah.
So there's two young girls, summer holidays.
Why not make some money, 14 years of age? This is great. And they called the number, and within 10 minutes, someone was there to pick them up. And that was the end of their story.
It is on the rise, and I think that educating the public about what's really going on will help so much, because people don't realize what's happening with these young people, don't realize the consequences long-term for them, don't realize that these young people are held by invisible chains. Some people have the idea of someone being sex trafficked and they're chained to a bed in some seedy hotel somewhere. That does happen, but it's rare. But these young women and young men are held by invisible chains of intimidation. They're beaten. If they try and run,
They'll say,
they're gang raped.
they'll tell them, we know where your mom lives. We know where your little sister is.
We know where your little brother is, and you try this again, you try and run away again, and you'll see what happens. So they're held by these invisible chains and are literally in slavery.
We have somebody who works with us, and her dad is a psychologist, her mom is a doctor, and she went through a romantic heartbreak in her life and was so heartbroken. And when you're young, that's your first love or whatever it is, you just feel the world has ended. And she someone approached her, if I remember the story correctly, and she unfortunately fell into this. But the great story is she's a survivor, and she works for us, and she goes into high schools now and universities and warns girls and guys how these pimps go about it and what they could do, to how to be careful, you know, and where they're going to confide in, or whatever it is. So she's become a help in our organization to go and warn. And that's such an important part, because they're so innocent, so many of them.
One of the signs to look for is when your teenager is isolating themselves. Now that can, you know, possibly be a symptom of, you know, drug use or anything else, but sometimes drug use goes hand in glove with these situations. So if you see your child sort of pulling away and isolating themselves, if you see new friends around, or perhaps, and those friends don't want to be seen by the parents, if the child is hiding who some of their friends are, these are big red flags about what could possibly be starting. Well, La Sortie is going to be breaking ground on a new residential project. It's sort of like the concept of a small apartment building where there will be 15 autonomous units that these young women can have their own apartment, and there's also common areas where they can gather, and there's opportunity for workshops and all those kinds of things, but each young woman can learn what it's like to
Be autonomous.
remanage their own life and be autonomous, and again, they can stay as long as they want until they know they're ready for the next chapter in their lives, because that's what we want these young ladies to know. Part of the book of their life has been chapters where their dignity has been snatched away, but now they get to rebuild, and there's lots of chapters coming for them, and they can stay as long as they need until they can turn the page.